morning air bit at Marcus Everett's face as he trudged through the northern Minnesota wilderness. Early December had brought the first heavy snowfall of the season, transforming the landscape into a pristine white canvas. At 53, Marcus had been hunting these woods for over 3 decades, but this season felt different. After losing his wife Carol to cancer last spring, the familiar trails carried a new emptiness. He adjusted his rifle strap and checked his watch. 6:42 a.m. The sun was just beginning to illuminate the forest, casting long shadows across the snow. His breath formed small clouds in the frigid air as he followed a set of deer tracks that had caught his attention 20 minutes earlier. Should have brought the thermos, he muttered to himself, flexing his gloved fingers to keep the circulation going. The temperature had dropped lower than forecast, likely 15 degrees below freezing. Marcus paused at the edge of a small clearing, scanning the area for movement. Something felt off. The woods were too quiet, lacking the usual chittering of winter birds and rustling of small animals. His decades of experience had taught him to trust this instinct. When the forest went silent, it usually meant trouble. That's when he noticed it. A strange disruption in the snow near the base of a large pine tree about 30 yards ahead. The snow appeared disturbed, not in the way animal tracks would create, but as if something had been deliberately covered. Curiosity overcame caution as Marcus approached, his hunting boots crunching through the fresh powder. As he drew closer, his brow furrowed. The disturbance was roughly circular, about 2 feet in diameter. Someone had been here, and recently. "Hello," he called out, receiving only the hollow echo of his own voice in return. Kneeling beside the spot, Marcus brushed away some of the snow with his gloved hand. His heart nearly stopped when he uncovered what appeared to be fabric, pale blue fabric. He dug faster now, adrenaline surging through his body. More fabric appeared, and then, horrifyingly, what looked like the bottom of a tiny foot. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his hands now frantically clearing away snow. A baby, buried headfirst in the snow. The tiny legs were cold and still. "No, no, no," Marcus muttered, working desperately to uncover the infant. The baby was wearing only a light onesie, completely inadequate for the brutal Minnesota winter. As he finally freed the tiny body, turning it over with trembling hands, Marcus prepared himself for the worst. The baby's face was pale blue, lips almost purple from the cold. A girl, he realized, no more than a few months old. Marcus had seen death before, in war, in hunting, in hospitals, but nothing had prepared him for this. A surge of rage and grief washed over him as he cradled the small body. Then, impossibly, the tiny chest moved. A shallow, almost imperceptible breath. "Oh my God," Marcus gasped. "You're alive." Training from his military days kicked in. He unzipped his heavy hunting jacket and carefully placed the infant against his chest, then zipped the jacket up around her, leaving only her face exposed. The baby's skin was ice cold against his, but that faint breathing continued. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal, as expected in this remote area. The nearest road was 3 miles back, and his truck was parked there. He had to move, and fast. "Hang on, little one," he whispered, securing his rifle across his back and beginning to move as quickly as he dared through the snow. "Just hang on." The weight of the baby against his chest seemed to push away the grief that had been his constant companion for months. Each step through the deep snow was deliberate, urgent. His mind raced with questions. Who would do this? How long had she been out here? But those questions would have to wait. As Marcus navigated back toward the trail, the baby made a tiny sound. Not quite a cry, but a whimper so faint he almost missed it. He took it as a good sign. "That's it," he encouraged, picking up his pace. "Fight, little one. I've got you now." The sun continued its slow climb into the morning sky, illuminating the path ahead. Marcus Everett, who had come to the woods seeking solitude and perhaps the ghost of his former life, now moved with a fierce new purpose. Whatever had brought this child here, whoever had done this unthinkable thing, he was determined that this would not be where her story ended. In his arms, against all odds, she continued to breathe. Marcus's boots pounded against the snow-covered trail, each exhale creating a cloud that dissipated behind him. The baby remained tucked inside his jacket, her tiny face pressed against his thermal shirt. He could feel her shallow breaths, each one a miracle that pushed him forward faster. 2 more miles, he panted, checking his watch. Only 20 minutes had passed since he'd found her, but it felt like hours. The trail narrowed as it wound through a dense section of pine. Marcus was moving too quickly for safety, risking a fall on the uneven terrain, but caution seemed less important than speed now. The infant's breathing had become more irregular, sometimes pausing for terrifying seconds before resuming. His phone still showed no signal. Marcus knew the basics of hypothermia treatment from survival training, but a baby this small, exposed to such extreme cold for an unknown period, this was well beyond his expertise. She needed medical professionals, and quickly. A branch caught his rifle strap, yanking him backward. Marcus stumbled, managing to twist his body to avoid crushing the infant as he fell hard onto one knee. Pain shot through his leg, but he pushed himself up immediately, readjusting the baby inside his jacket. "Sorry about that, little one," he murmured, checking to make sure she was still breathing. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, the first movement he'd seen from her. Something about that tiny movement broke something open inside him. For months after Carol's death, Marcus had moved through life mechanically, hunting not for enjoyment, but because it was what he had always done. Now, with this fragile life literally held against his heart, he felt a fierce protective instinct he hadn't experienced since his son James was born 30 years ago. "You're a fighter," he told the baby, "just like my Carol was. Keep fighting." As he crossed a small frozen stream, memories of the hospital room where he'd sat with Carol during her final days surfaced unbidden. The beeping monitors, the sterile smell, the way her once strong hand had felt so light in his. She would have known exactly what to do right now. Carol had been a pediatric nurse for 27 years before the cancer took her. "Wish you were here, honey," Marcus whispered. "This little one could use your touch." The baby made another sound, stronger this time, almost a proper cry. Marcus felt a surge of hope. Cresting a small hill, he spotted the dirt access road in the distance, where he'd parked his truck. Just half a mile more. He picked up his pace, despite the burning in his legs and lungs. The sound of an engine cut through the morning quiet. Marcus looked up to see a green Forest Service truck making its slow way down the unpaved road. He'd never been so happy to see another human being. "Hey!" he shouted, waving one arm frantically while supporting the baby with the other. "Help! Emergency!" The truck slowed, then stopped. A uniformed ranger stepped out, looking confused at the sight of the disheveled hunter running toward him. "I need help," Marcus called, closing the distance between them. "Found a baby in the snow. She's alive, but barely." The ranger, Johnson, according to his nameplate, reacted instantly, reaching for his radio as Marcus approached. "This is Ranger Johnson requesting immediate medical assistance at Access Road 14, North Section. Infant with severe hypothermia. Repeat, infant requiring urgent medical transport." The radio crackled a response as Marcus carefully unzipped his jacket to show the ranger the baby. In the growing daylight, her condition looked even more precarious. Her skin a mottled blue-gray, her movements minimal. "Dispatch says ambulance is 20 minutes out," Johnson said grimly, ushering Marcus into the heated cab of the Forest Service truck. "Let's keep her warm. I've got emergency blankets." The ranger pulled a silver thermal blanket from an emergency kit and helped Marcus wrap the infant while keeping her close to body heat. "How did you find her?" Johnson asked, turning the truck's heater to maximum. "Buried in the snow," Marcus replied, his voice breaking slightly. "Headfirst. Like someone tried to, like they wanted to." He couldn't finish the sentence. The ranger's face darkened. "How long ago?" "Maybe 40 minutes now." Johnson nodded, his expression grim as he spoke into his radio again, this time to the sheriff's department. Marcus caught phrases like possible attempted infanticide and crime scene coordinates. The baby's eyes opened briefly, startlingly dark against her pale face. Marcus felt her tiny hand press against his chest, 5 perfect fingers splayed as if reaching for something to hold onto. "You're safe now," he promised her, though he knew the battle for her life was far from over. "You're not alone anymore." Outside, The wail of distant sirens began to penetrate the morning stillness. The emergency room of North Country Regional Hospital erupted into activity as Marcus followed the paramedics through the automatic doors. The baby, still unnamed, still a mystery, had been transferred to a specialized warming apparatus in the ambulance, her tiny body connected to monitors that beeped with concerning irregularity. Severe hypothermia, bradycardia, core temperature 82 degrees. One paramedic reported to the waiting team of doctors and nurses. Estimated 3 to 4 months old, female, found buried in snow approximately 1 hour ago. Marcus stood back as the medical team whisked the infant away, feeling suddenly useless after the intense focus of the rescue. A nurse with kind eyes approached him, clipboard in hand. "Sir, I need to ask you some questions about the baby." "I don't know anything about her," Marcus admitted, realizing how strange a story must sound. "I was hunting. I just found her." Before the nurse could respond, a sheriff's deputy appeared at her side. "Mr. Everett, I'm Deputy Claire Holbrook. I need to take your statement and get the exact location where you found the infant." The next hour passed in a blur of questions, statements, and forms. Marcus described everything in detail: the disturbed snow, the baby's position, the absence of footprints or other evidence. He provided the GPS coordinates from his hunting app and watched as Deputy Holbrook organized a team to investigate the scene. Who would do something like this? Marcus asked finally, his voice hollow. Deputy Holbrook's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes hardened. "That's what we're going to find out, Mr. Everett." After giving his statement, Marcus found himself alone in the waiting room, still wearing his snow-crusted hunting clothes. He should go home, change, get some rest. Instead, he approached the reception desk. "The baby that was just brought in, is there any update?" The receptionist made a call, spoke quietly, then looked up at Marcus. "Dr. Rivera will speak with you shortly." 15 minutes later, a petite woman in scrubs and a white coat approached. "Mr. Everett, I'm Dr. Rivera. I understand you're the one who found our little Jane Doe." "Is she?" Marcus couldn't finish the question. "She's alive," Dr. Rivera said, gesturing for Marcus to sit. "Her condition is critical but stable. We're slowly raising her core temperature and treating frostbite on her extremities. The next 24 hours will be crucial." Relief washed over Marcus like a physical sensation. How long was she out there? "Based on her condition, I'd estimate 2 to 3 hours maximum. Any longer." The doctor didn't need to complete the thought. She was dressed inadequately for the conditions, but the snow actually created a partial insulating effect once she was buried, and your quick action certainly saved her life. Marcus nodded, absorbing this information. "Has anyone reported a missing baby?" "Not yet. The sheriff's department has put out alerts, and they're checking hospitals and birth records. Child Protective Services has been notified." Dr. Rivera hesitated, then added, "This was no accident, Mr. Everett. Someone intended for this child not to be found." The weight of that reality settled heavily between them. "Can I see her?" Marcus asked suddenly, surprising himself with the request. Dr. Rivera considered this. Normally, only family would be permitted, but given the circumstances. "Follow me." She led him through secured doors to the pediatric intensive care unit. Through a glass window, Marcus could see the infant in a specialized warming bed, surrounded by equipment. She looked impossibly small and vulnerable, but there was pink returning to her skin, a vast improvement from the blue-gray pallor of earlier. "She's a fighter," Dr. Rivera said softly. "Yes, she is," Marcus agreed, placing his hand against the glass. A social worker approached, introducing herself as Deborah Winton from Child Protective Services. "Mr. Everett, I understand you're the one who found the baby. We'll need to interview you further as part of our investigation." Marcus nodded, his eyes still on the infant. "What happens to her now?" "Once she's medically cleared, she'll be placed in emergency foster care while we investigate and attempt to locate family members," Ms. Winton explained. "If no suitable family is found, or if family members were involved in the abandonment, she'll remain in state custody." Something shifted in Marcus at those words, a decision forming before he was even consciously aware of it. "I'd like to apply," he said quietly. "Apply?" Ms. Winton looked confused. "To be her foster parent." Marcus turned from the window to face her directly. "I have a clean record, a stable home, and experience raising a child. My son is grown now, but I remember how." The social worker's expression softened slightly. "It's not quite that simple, Mr. Everett, but we can certainly discuss the possibilities." Behind the glass, the baby's monitors beeped steadily, each sound a testament to her will to survive against impossible odds. 3 days passed in a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and paperwork. Marcus had barely left the hospital, catching uncomfortable naps in waiting room chairs and showering in the staff facilities that a sympathetic nurse had given him access to. The baby, now officially designated as Baby Jane Doe in hospital records, had stabilized, though she remained in intensive care. On the morning of the 4th day, Marcus arrived at the hospital to find Deputy Holbrook waiting for him in the lobby. "Mr. Everett," she greeted him, her expression somber. "We need to talk." They settled into a quiet corner of the cafeteria, steam rising from cups of mediocre coffee between them. "We've identified the infant," Holbrook began, opening a folder. "Her name is Olivia Jenkins, 4 months old. Born August 8th at Riverside Memorial Hospital, about 60 miles south of here." Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions at this news. The nameless baby now had an identity, a history. Somehow it made what had happened to her even more horrific. "The mother is Elise Jenkins, 19 years old," Holbrook continued. "Single parent. No father listed on the birth certificate. She was reported missing by her employer when she didn't show up for her shift at the Pinewood Diner 3 days ago, the same day you found the baby. You think she's the one who—" Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. "We're not jumping to conclusions yet. We found Miss Jenkins' car abandoned about half a mile from where you discovered Olivia. Signs of a struggle in the snow, and blood, not a lot, but enough to concern us." Marcus set down his coffee, the implication sinking in. "You think something happened to the mother, too?" Holbrook nodded grimly. "We've expanded the search. Right now, we're treating this as a possible abduction with attempted infanticide." "Any suspects?" "We're looking at several angles. Elise has an ex-boyfriend with a record of domestic violence. There's also her stepfather, who she recently filed a restraining order against." The deputy closed her folder. "I wanted you to know because this case is getting media attention. The story of how you found Olivia has already made regional news." Marcus had been so focused on the baby that he'd barely noticed the reporters hovering around the hospital entrance. He'd refused all interview requests, unwilling to become a local hero, for simply doing what any decent person would do. "There's something else," Holbrook added. "The social worker, Ms. Winton, mentioned you've expressed interest in fostering Olivia temporarily." "That's right. The department doesn't object. You have no criminal record. You're a respected member of the community. And frankly, you've shown more concern for this child than many biological parents I encounter in my work." Holbrook's professional demeanor softened slightly. "But I need to be clear. If we locate a suitable family member, custody arrangements could change quickly." Marcus nodded, understanding the tentative nature of what he was proposing. "I just want her to be safe." After Holbrook left, Marcus made his way to the PICU. Through the window, he could see Dr. Rivera examining Olivia, who was now awake and moving her limbs with greater strength than before. The doctor noticed him and gestured for him to come in. "Good morning, Mr. Everett," she said, her tired eyes crinkling with a smile. "Someone's been asking for you." "She has." Marcus approached the warming bed cautiously. "Well, not in so many words," Dr. Rivera chuckled. "But she definitely responds to your voice. We've noticed her heart rate stabilizes when you're here talking to her." Marcus felt an unexpected lump in his throat. He gently reached into the incubator, following the doctor's instructions on how to touch Olivia without disturbing the monitoring equipment. The baby's tiny hand closed around his finger with surprising strength. "Hello, Olivia," he said softly, trying out her real name for the first time. "I hear you've been getting stronger." Dr. Rivera checked some readings on a monitor. The frostbite on her extremities is responding well to treatment. We don't anticipate any need for surgical intervention, which is remarkable considering the circumstances. When might she be released? Marcus asked. Perhaps in a week, if this progress continues. Dr. Rivera gave him an appraising look. Ms. Winton mentioned you're completing emergency foster care certification. That's a significant commitment, Mr. Everett. Marcus watched as Olivia's eyes, a deep brown that reminded him painfully of Carol's, focused on his face. I've been alone too long, he said simply. We both could use someone to care for. In the hallway outside, a nurse was updating a whiteboard with patient information. Under Olivia's name, she had written Miracle Baby in parentheses, a nickname that had spread throughout the hospital staff. Local media had picked it up too, with headlines about the Christmas miracle found in the snow. But Marcus knew it wasn't a miracle that had saved her. It was human determination, Olivia's will to survive, and his refusal to let her go. As he held her tiny hand, he silently renewed the promise he'd made in those woods. She would never be alone again. A week later, Marcus sat in a small consultation room at the hospital, listening as Dr. Rivera and Ms. Winton discussed Olivia's imminent discharge. The baby had made remarkable progress, gaining weight and showing no lasting neurological damage from her ordeal. The frostbite on her toes and fingertips had healed better than expected, though she would always carry small scars as reminders. We've expedited your emergency foster care certification, Ms. Winton explained, sliding a folder of documents across the table. Given the unusual circumstances and the bond that's clearly formed, the judge was willing to fast-track the process. Marcus nodded, signing where indicated. His home had been inspected, his background thoroughly checked, and he'd completed an intensive crash course in infant care. His son James, now living in Chicago with his own family, had expressed surprise at his father's decision, but had ultimately offered his full support. There are some specific medical follow-ups needed, Dr. Rivera added, providing a schedule of appointments. Her immune system may be compromised for some time, so you'll need to be vigilant about visitors and exposure to illness. The consultation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Deputy Holbrook entered, her expression more severe than usual. Mr. Everett, doctors. She nodded in greeting. I have an update on the investigation. Marcus felt his chest tighten. You found Elise Jenkins? Yes. Holbrook's face remained grim. A search team located her this morning in an abandoned hunting cabin about 4 miles from where Olivia was found. She's alive, but in serious condition, severe hypothermia, dehydration, and blunt force trauma to the head. A complicated mix of emotions washed over Marcus. Relief that Olivia's mother was alive. Horror at what she must have endured. She's being airlifted to University Medical Center, Holbrook continued, better equipped for her injuries. But before they sedated her for transport, she was conscious enough to speak briefly. She confirmed our suspicions about her ex-boyfriend, Kyle Brenner. He apparently abducted both her and Olivia at gunpoint from their apartment. Dr. Rivera shook her head in disbelief. And he's the one who buried the baby in the snow. According to Elise, yes. She said he was enraged because he'd just found out he wasn't Olivia's biological father. He forced Elise to drive to the remote location, attacked her, then took the baby into the woods, telling Elise he was getting rid of the problem. Marcus clenched his fists under the table, a cold rage building inside him. When he returned without Olivia, Elise tried to run to find her daughter. That's when he beat her and left her in the cabin, apparently assuming she would die from her injuries or the cold. Have you found him? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Not yet, but we have alerts out across 3 states. His vehicle was spotted crossing into North Dakota yesterday. Holbrook's expression softened slightly as she turned to Ms. Winton. This obviously changes the custody situation. Once Elise recovers, she'll likely want to reclaim custody of her daughter. The social worker nodded. Assuming she's cleared of any wrongdoing and deemed fit, yes. Marcus felt a hollow sensation in his chest, but pushed it aside. What mattered was Olivia's well-being, not his own attachment. How long is her recovery expected to take? He asked. Hard to say, Holbrook replied. The head injuries are serious, she may face weeks or months of hospitalization and rehabilitation. Ms. Winton made some notes in her file. In that case, the emergency foster placement with Mr. Everett will proceed as planned, with regular reviews. When Ms. Jenkins is recovered enough, we'll facilitate visitation and assess the situation. After the meeting concluded, Marcus found himself alone in the hospital nursery, preparing to take Olivia home. The nurses had dressed her in a new outfit donated by hospital staff, a pale yellow sleeper with tiny embroidered daisies. As he carefully lifted her from the crib, Olivia's eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that seemed beyond her months. Her tiny hand reached up to pat his cheek, as if offering comfort. "It's going to be okay," he told her softly, though he wasn't entirely sure who he was reassuring. "We'll figure this out together." Outside the hospital, the first heavy snow since the day he'd found her was beginning to fall. Marcus tucked the blanket more securely around Olivia as they stepped through the sliding doors. A few persistent reporters called questions from behind the security line, but he ignored them, focusing only on getting the baby safely to his truck. As he secured her in the newly installed car seat, Marcus glanced up at the swirling snowflakes. Just a week ago, snow had nearly taken this child's life. Now, as they drove away from the hospital toward an uncertain future, it seemed more like a clean page, a fresh start for both of them, however temporary it might be.